School Preview Show presented by Gold Athletics. I'm your host, John Serenitas, and as always, I'm joined by my partners, Tyler Amaral and Adam Kirchen. Gentlemen, how are you this evening?
Good.
Doing good. We got a full house today.
We do. We have a full house tonight, and I got to tell you, it is cold. I just got home from practice. It was flurrying. If that might be a precursor of things to come. Yeah, it really is depressing. Like right now, I need to thaw out. So I'm going to need to get amped up here talking high school football so I can thaw out. Now, before we do that, I do want to remind you that Gold Athletics is your one-stop shop for fundraising. They've recently expanded into Maine and New Hampshire with Blaze and Jeff Whitman. They are ready to support even more programs across New England. Whether you're in football or any other sport, reach out to Gold Athletics and they'll make sure your program raises the money. Visit goldathletics.com today. All right, gentlemen, we are finally at the penultimate moment in Massachusetts high school football. That's the focus tonight. Maine is done. New Hampshire is done. Vermont is done. Rhode Island is done. The only two states left that are playing are Massachusetts and Connecticut. Of course, the CIAC kicked off their playoffs tonight. Quarterfinals, semifinals will be on Sunday. Then state championship weekend will be December 14th. And, of course, we'll have full coverage of all 6 state title games in Connecticut on December 14th. And we're also hoping to cover some of the quarterfinal, semifinal playoff games. We are at the Newington Wethersfield game tonight, and we hope to be at a couple of the games on Sunday. Now, the focus of the show for tonight, of course, is the 8 MIAA Super Bowls that are going to be played over the course of the next 3 nights, starting tomorrow night. And what I want to do, gentlemen, is we're actually going to go in order of the games here rather than go in order of the divisions. Is that okay with you, or would you rather do divisions?
No, this is fine.
Okay, so we're going to go in the order of the game. So, and part of the reason we're doing this is, of course, we want to make sure that you know when the times are so that if you have a rooting interest in any of the games, that you get there. Of course, the first matchup tomorrow is going to be the Division 7 Super Bowl, which features defending champion Uxbridge taking on Mashpee. That game is slated to kick off at 5:30 p.m. It'll be one of 2 games tomorrow. Interesting matchup here. Uxbridge rolled along this year just like they did last year. You kind of knew coming into the season if they weren't the favorite, they were certainly one of the favorites. Matt Blood's squad played like a favorite, and they take on a Mashpee team that once upon a time was a regular visitor to Gillette Stadium. It's been a while for Matt Treveri's squad, but when you look at this matchup, it's an intriguing matchup between 2 programs that one program, as I mentioned, was a regular visitor to Gillette. Uxbridge is trending in that direction as well, but this should be a pretty intriguing matchup between 2 teams that can be pretty physical.
Yeah, I think both of these teams are good. They run the ball first, but they're balanced with the pass, and they favor sort of like high efficiency type passing. They're not low percentage throws. This isn't like a pure vertical passing game for either team. I think both of these teams want to run the ball first and then work into their play action. Mashpee's under center a lot. They're a big I team, but they can get in the shotgun too if they need to. I think that both these are really good teams. I mean, look, Uxbridge has won 26 games in a row. I thought they'd be good this year, but I didn't think they'd be to that level. They're almost as good as they were last year. They're not quite as dominant, but they're beating all these teams. Obviously with Cam LaChapelle, the running back, a junior. Again, if you expect him to come back and them to make another run next year. Mashpee's more of a senior team. They got Dominic Mattiato at the quarterback position, Ben Squash at running back, Logan Wills at running back, and Ryan Treveri at receiver. So like both of these offenses are good. I don't expect a low scoring game here unless who knows what happens. But I think this is a pretty even game, even though Mashpee's lost a couple games. They as me and Tyler were there, they rested their starters against Sandwich on Thanksgiving. So a good game on tap for sure.
Yeah. I mean, this one's an intriguing one. I think I sort of underestimated Uxbridge coming into the year. They lost a lot. I think just like naturally, I thought, they're losing Kellen LaChapelle last year. I wasn't quite sure how they'd be this year, but Rogan Devlin stepped in nicely at the quarterback spot. Camden LaChapelle has really stepped up his game. He's over 2,000 yards, school record at Uxbridge for rushing yards in a single season. So he's, poised for a monster game, I think, in this one as well, averaging right around 200 yards rushing a game. He's really tough to contain. He's an elusive runner. I know a point of emphasis from Ashby is going to be tackling in this one and tackling in the open field. Uxbridge has a lot of team speed. Mashpee's been impressive. I picked against Mashpee last round. I thought Clinton would knock them off. They got up big on Clinton. Clinton made a furious rally, almost pulled it off, but couldn't quite do that. They ran out of time. Mashpee, of course, Adam, as you know, as well as anyone here, playing for a bigger purpose this year. They lost Nolan Barr in June, who was a rising senior. He died in a car accident. So, they've kind of rallied around that all season long. They're an impressive team and they're well coached. We know what we're going to get from a Matt Treveri team. You mentioned they're under center a lot on offense. They do mix it up. They're very multiple on offense, especially for a team in Division 7. I think this is going to be a really fun game. I just ultimately don't know if Mashpee is going to be able to last or be able to hang with Uxbridge for the full 48 minutes. I think it'll be, maybe 30 to 35 minutes. They're going to be neck and neck, but I think Uxbridge ultimately has too much depth, too much speed, and too many horses, and the Spartans go back to back here.
Yeah, it should be a really good game between two programs that, like you guys said, like to run the football. They're physical, but they can make plays when they need them in the passing game. Should be a fun game to kick off Super Bowl week. Willem LeCompte checks in. Big night in the CIAC tonight. Yeah, it is a big night. Some intriguing matchups, like I mentioned earlier. And one of the ones that I'm keeping an eye on is New Canaan and Maloney tonight. As I was saying to these guys, if Maloney's defense was more consistent with that skill group, with Jesus Martel and Donald Highsmith, I mean, that's as good a skill group as there is in Connecticut. But New Canaan's New Canaan. I mean, they're coming off a 34-0 win on Thanksgiving over at Darien. So they're poised to make another run. But we'll have plenty of CIAC playoff coverage for you here in the next couple of weeks. So we're looking forward to that. And if you have any CIAC questions, shoot them our way tonight. I would love to talk some Connecticut high school football as well. All right, next up, staying in Massachusetts, we have the Division 6 Super Bowl. That's going to be an 8 p.m. kickoff tomorrow night. And I think this is one of the best matchups of the 8 games, fellas, and I think you'll agree with me. Hudson, Fairhaven, coming into the season, when you looked at D6, I know when I looked at D6, in the back of my mind, I thought to myself, I hope these two schools end up on opposite sides of the bracket, because if they do, it's going to make for one hell of a Super Bowl if they get there. And they have. And I think it's a contrast in styles. You got Hudson. They like to spread you out. Jake Attaway, perhaps the most underrated quarterback in the state the last 3 years. He leads that vaunted offensive attack. And then, of course, Fairhaven, defending D6 champs. You got Justin Marks with over 100 career rushing touchdowns in Derek Almeida's triple option offense. It should be a lot of fun. Again, like I said, contrast in styles. I feel from a coaching standpoint, this is the kind of game, guys, that whichever team can establish their style of play early, I think can win this football game.
Yeah, I feel like, all season we've been talking about how strong D6 is and like how some of these teams could go up a division or two and still fare pretty well. I mean, if you look at Fairhaven, I mean, they played BC High to a competitive game. I think they're only down one score going into the fourth quarter. And Hudson they've been dominant. If they're not the best team in Central Mass, they're close to it, along with like Grafton and Leominster and teams like that. They're right there. And like you said, this kid Attaway is just a stud, like a runner, a thrower, a guy who can make things happen. I don't know what you do to defend a guy like that, because he'll drop back and guys will run deep, and then all of a sudden he's got all this room and he's 35 yards down the field. And then with Fairhaven, I mean, it's an option offense, but so much of it is based around Justin Marks. He's just a tremendous running back, one of the best in the state. And I saw him in person this year when they beat Bourne. Guys just bounce off him. Like, he's such a powerful back. I mean, he's fast too, but it's really his power that makes him so tough to play against, because you need more than one guy to bring him down. And so, both of these teams have, tremendous players, and they have good offenses. And I'm with you, John. If one of these teams can sort of establish the way of the game, like, I mean, I remember that Salem game last year against Fairhaven. Like, Salem was pretty much moving the ball, but they weren't getting it for long periods of time. And if you fall into that thing, it's like quicksand. You don't know what to do, and you're moving around, and all of a sudden you're 20 points behind. So, when you play it's one of those deals where you almost wish, if you're one of these teams, to take the opening kick and see if you can put them on their heels a little bit. But this is a great game. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I think arguably this is the top game of the slate this year. I saw them play last year in the semifinal round, and Fairhaven dominated the first half. It was 27-0. They had nearly 300 yards rushing in the first half alone. Hudson came storming back. That ended up being a 40-37 final. And once Attaway and that Hudson offense got rolling, Fairhaven had no answer for the Hawks. I saw Hudson play a couple weeks ago against Norwell in the state semifinals this year. I was very impressed. I mean, we know about all the skill, but like Attaway, in my opinion, he's more impressive as a runner than he is a thrower, which is saying a lot. He was kind of limited passing against Norwell. They held them to, I think, 49 yards passing in that game. But what impressed me the most was just his patience. He let the game come to him, didn't force anything. He had an interception, but it was on a throwaway Hail Mary attempt on the last play of the first half. So he was super patient as a runner. They use him around down by the goal line. It's just it's going to, again, contrast in styles, but these two teams that can really score. They're not really, either of them are necessarily defensive-minded teams. They both can play good defense, but Fairhaven scores out of that triple option. Like, it's not necessarily.
Yeah, they're not a ground and pound. Once you get to 21 points, you call it a night. Like, to your point, they can get into a shootout and win if they have to.
They can, and I saw them do that against Linfield. They won 36-34 in overtime, and they play with a lot of pace too. So they're not like, snapping the ball with 10 seconds left on the clock every snap. It's like they're hustling back to the line of scrimmage and getting that snap off quickly. So that's a super impressive team as well, Fairhaven. It's a brutal scheme. You can't prepare for it. Essentially, I think they're the only team that I can think of off the top of my head that runs a triple option in the state on a consistent basis. So it's brutal to stop. Again, record breakers on both sides. Justin Marks, of course, state's all-time touchdown leader. If you take into account passing and rushing touchdowns, Jake Attaway just broke Troy Flutie's record on Thanksgiving. So two record breakers here, two of the best players the last 10 years to come through. Should be a really fun game. I picked Hudson before the season. I picked Hudson going into the playoffs, and then I saw Fairhaven beat Linfield in the way they were so resilient, able to pull off that win. And I can't pick against them at this point. I think it's gonna be an awesome game, high scoring, both teams getting to the 30s, but I lean Fairhaven here.
Yeah, it should be a fantastic game. Like I said, coming into the season, I wanted this matchup. I think it is a Super Bowl worthy matchup. It's going to be a great way to cap off night one tomorrow night. Again, Hudson and Fairhaven kicks off at 8 p.m. Now, this Thursday slate, I mean, depending on who you talk to, this is probably the best day of the three in terms of games. It all starts off with a 3 p.m. kickoff between Scituate and Duxbury for the Division IV state title. This will be the third time that they're meeting in the last 5 years. Longtime Patriot League rivals. When you look at this game, there's a lot of storylines here, right? Like a few years back, Scituate wins on a last-second score, 15-14. Duxbury returns the favor last year, blows them out in that state title game. Both of these teams coming into the season had some question marks, but Scituate had more experience coming back. They had more knowns coming back, if you will, Duxbury had some unknowns. Duxbury at this point, they can get to the Super Bowl on the strength of their program. That's what they've done this year. Scituate has rolled their way through here. Impressive on Thanksgiving in their win over Hingham. Look, in many ways, you look at this game and you say, okay, is this a coronation for Scituate, or is Duxbury good enough to make this a game and possibly steal it? We'll find out on Thursday, but this is a prime time worthy game here. And and I like to bitch and moan about things, but this is why I almost wish like all of these games were primetime games, because they're that good this year. The slate is that good. This one is no exception. It should be a terrific matchup.
Yeah, I mean, these are, I said this in the preview, these are like the premier programs on the South Shore right now. Like, if you look at all the times these teams have been to Gillette lately, I mean, Duxbury just basically sets up shop here every year, and Scituate's not far behind. I think the one thing about this game is, if it were anybody else, if it were anybody other than Duxbury, for the way that Scituate has played this year, you would call them the easy favorite, because Scituate has been dominant. Like, they've only played a couple close games. I mean, they beat Foxborough, I think 21-14. That's almost it when you're talking about close games for Scituate this year. Lawson Foley's had a all scholastic type season. But then, look, you can't overlook Duxbury in any game like this. They're just a big game program. And, they've got, good players all over. And again, this is not like their most talented team. This is not their most star-studded team. They lost a lot off of last year. And so here they are with quarterback Trevor Jones and running back Jack Reese. I mean, it's, it should be a good game. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if Scituate won by a couple scores, because they've just been that good. I mean, they beat Hanover, a good team, I think like 52-0 this year, right? You were at that game, Tyler.
Yeah, it's 52-0.
Yeah, so I mean, that's crazy. Like, that's against their schedule, they shouldn't really cruise given how good they are, but they are. So I like Scituate here in this game, but again, Duxbury's Duxbury. They just live in these big games, and so I could see Duxbury pulling the upset, but I really feel strongly about how well Scituate has played this year.
Yeah, I've seen Scituate play a few times. I saw them that game against Foxborough that you referenced, that was won on a Hail Mary. I saw them beat Hanover 52-0, and then most recently I saw them beat Grafton 14-3. And that game was 7-3 for nearly half the game. So I thought even Herb Devine referenced in the post-game interview that was sort of an unconventional win for Scituate. When you think about Scituate football, you think about going up and down the field, that spread offense, tough to stop. They're going to score 40, and they're going to win shootouts. But for them to win a game against a team like Grafton, who is significantly bigger on the lines, a very physical team, and to be able to beat them 14-3, kind of bend but don't break. Finn Gilmore had, I think, 125, 130 yards rushing for Grafton. So that's kind of what they're going to see against Duxbury too. Like this isn't the classic Duxbury with Bobby Mameron or Matt Festa at quarterback. It's more ground based, and that starts at quarterback with Trevor Jones, but also Jack Reese and his emergence. This Duxbury team wants to run the ball first and foremost this year, so I think we're going to see probably a lower scoring game than I think most people are expecting. Last year, Duxbury broke the record for most points scored ever in a Super Bowl with 62. They might get to a third of that this year. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if neither team gets to 20. I think it's going to be similar to that game in 2021 when they matched up at Gillette and Keegan Sullivan had that game-winning two-point conversion. But Scituate, this team is very impressive. Willie Robinson, the Army lacrosse commit in the backfield. You mentioned Lawson Foley. Lawson's brother, sophomore Grayson Foley. He adds kind of an explosive, dynamic element out of the backfield. Johnny Donovan's a really good player. Joey Burke's a nice receiver. They've got a lot of key pieces. I think they're a little bit bigger on the offensive line too. And then you guys got guys like Bronson Bossy, Willis Ames making plays on defense. I think the Sailors win this one. Should be a great one. I'm expecting something like 20-14.
Yeah, again, I think it should be a fantastic game. And I tend to agree with you, Tyler. I don't think it's going to be what we saw last year just because Duxbury is not that team, but Situate is that team. But again, these two teams know each other so well that I don't see an explosion of points here. I think that both defenses will step up, play well, and they'll keep this game in the 20s. And ultimately, I think Situate has to be the favorite going into it. But again, this Duxbury program, despite coming off a tough loss on Thanksgiving to rival Marshfield, I think that they'll be ready to play, and I think that this should be a pretty competitive game. All right, next up, we have the granddaddy of them all, the Division I Super Bowl matchup, and that pits the Needham Rockets against the Zavarian Hawks. This will be a 5:30 kickoff on Thursday. Fantastic matchup here. Needham, look, going into the season, we all felt Needham could make a run. We all thought that this team was good enough with what they had back, Aiden Williams, good senior class. We thought they could make a run. I'm not sure that we saw this, though, right? I mean, because there was always that hesitation where it was like, okay, they could make a run, but what happens if they run into St. John's Prep or Springfield Central or Zavarian? Are they good enough to get past those teams? Well, they've proven they are. They're here. They're for real. They're making their second Super Bowl appearance in the last 14 years. Their last appearance was 2011 when they played BC High at Gillette. As for Zavarian, they're looking to go back-to-back. Of course, they won it all last year, beating the Prep, coming off a tough Thanksgiving Day loss to rival St. John's Prep. But listen, it's for all the marbles now. I think this game is going to be as good as advertised. It's going to be a fantastic matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see what you're saying, John, because like I was thinking, Needham's going to be very good, but like they ran into St. John's Prep, and I said, well, okay, this is where it comes to an end. But they proved to be the better team. Williams is an immense player. He's so good. He breaks off at least one or two huge runs every game in terms of like 30, 40, 50 yards. He's a big guy. I think he's 6'2", right?
Yeah, he's a big back.
He's a big back, but you don't expect those guys to be fast as well, and he is fast. He's got all those qualities that you're looking for. And so they're a good team. They're very good up front. I think actually Needham might be a little bit better up front than Zavarian, maybe on the offensive line. But I think with Zavarian, you look at their defensive line and Micah Amity and Dominic Funk and those guys, that's a dominant group. And if Zavarian's going to win, those guys are going to have to play up to their skill and talent level. And also for Zavarian, I think Will Wood has kind of gone under the radar a little bit because, there's other guys on that team that get sort of the attention, and he's only a sophomore. And he hasn't had, like, amazing stats. It's not that. It's just when he plays, he is so efficient, especially in that short to intermediate passing game, that gets this team first downs and moving the ball down the field. He's really done a tremendous job. And another guy from Zavarian who I think has been outstanding is Dave Shivigato. He's like a running back, wide receiver, defensive back. He's like a safety, really good player. Only a junior, should get a lot of colleges for him. So but back to Needham, I think if you talk about defensive ends, that Will McDonald kid is played a great season. He's been almost unblockable in the Bay State Conference, and he's another guy that for Needham is going to have a big game.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for weeks now, where like Needham, regardless of who's put in front of them, the public or private, doesn't matter. They can match the physicality. They can match the size in the trenches, and that's going to be key here. That's one of the main reasons why they were able to beat St. John's Prep. Most public schools cannot match that strength, that physicality, specifically at the line of scrimmage and the point of attack. But Needham was able to do that. Again, not many teams, public or private, can say that they have 3 Division I commits. Needham has that. Needham has the top end skill. They have the physicality. They have the coaching. They have the pedigree now. This senior class has been building towards this. They lost a tough one to Zavarian last year in the semifinals. So this is an enormous senior class. I think it's like 30 deep, that senior class at Needham. So this is really going to be a great game. I can't wait for this one. Aiden Williams, he might be the best player in the state, all around. He's just had a phenomenal year at running back and linebacker. And they can also kind of throw the ball as well. Griffin Carr does a nice job at quarterback for them. So this Needham team, absolutely 100% the real deal. I kind of felt the same as you guys going into the season. I was like, okay, they're a semifinalist team, I think, clearly, but can they hang with St. John's Prep's Very and Springfield Central as the season's gone on? And we've seen the scores, we've seen the highlights, we've seen them play, and we've seen this defense, specifically the defense of the running game. It's like, okay, this team's legit. They might be, a top 1 or 2 team in the entire state. And that's true. And I think they are that good. And the defense specifically is that good. This Zavarian team, you mentioned Will Wood. He's done a phenomenal job, I think, taking over the reins at a program like Zavarian as a sophomore. Always high expectations, but especially when you're the guy replacing Hasselbeck coming off that state title team, right? And they got Dominic Funk, who transferred in to go with Amity on that in the front 4 for the Zavarian defense. So it's a big physical line, but I think Needham is going to be able to handle that. Luke Bell, I think, has really kind of emerged here as maybe one of the more unique players in the state. He makes differences every week, all 3 phases. You mentioned Chevigato. They've got a lot of great pieces here. Vince Abuse has been in and out of the lineup. He's going to be good to go for this one. That's kind of another body that Needham's going to have to stop here. Again, one of the better players in the state. He's kind of Zavarian's version of Aiden Williams. I'll be interested to see how much they use Bryce Todd in this game. He had a nice second half there against BC High in the state semifinals. I think this is a true toss-up. I'm going to go Needham here. I think it's going to be something like 24-21, back and forth game. But I like the Rockets here.
That would be something if Needham can get it done and win a Division I Super Bowl, because let's face it, it doesn't happen very often that public schools win Division I state titles. I mean, Division I, outside of Everett and Brockton, Division I is predominantly, for years now, been ruled by either Zavarian or St. John's Prep or Catholic Memorial here and there, or BC High. And, of course, you also had Springfield Central. But outside of that, outside of Springfield Central and Everett, it's been mostly the Catholic schools that have had success in recent years. If Needham can pull this off, it would be not only a big win for them, but I think it would be a big win for public high school football in Massachusetts. You are watching the high school preview show presented by Gold Athletics. I'm your host, John Saradinas. As always, I'm joined by my partner, Tyler Amaral, and Adam Kirchen is joining us tonight as well. Just a reminder that Gold Athletics is your one-stop shop for fundraising. They've recently expanded into Maine and New Hampshire with Blaze and Jeff Whitman. They are ready to support even more programs across New England, whether you're in football or any other sport. Reach out to Gold Athletics and they'll make sure that you raise the money. All right, next up we have the Division II Super Bowl matchup. And this one's taking place for the 3rd time in 4 years, and it pits the King Philip Warriors out of Rentham taking on the Catholic Memorial Knights. This game is slated for an 8 p.m. kickoff, and this is a familiar act. We've seen this before. Catholic Memorial, of course, after losing their opener to Cardinal Hayes, has steamrolled everybody on their way to Gillette. King Philip is currently riding a 25-game winning streak. They've been on an impressive 2-year run themselves. And this is essentially, in many people's eyes, if not the 2 best teams in the state, 2 of the 3 best teams in the state. But either way you look at it, this is the 3rd installment of what has become a nice rivalry here now. This should be a good football game, should be one heck of a game. And it's a game that in many ways is hard to call, because while Catholic Memorial looks like a prohibitive favorite in this one, we all know how good KP can be when they're clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah, I think this has been one of the best rivalries of the postseason the last few years. It's the 3rd time these teams are playing. And the thing I like about King Philip in this matchup is the way that they can sort of assert their type of game onto an opponent. They were able to do that a couple times when these teams met before, but then the Catholic Memorial's like skill players sort of take over. But it's going to be the same formula you try to do if you're KP. Get a 1 or 2 score lead and run the ball and drain the clock. And a lot of that is style of play. But I feel like this King Philip team might be more able to do that than in past years because there's a bunch of different running backs that KP can throw out there in this game, and not to get one guy tired, they can use more than one. They can use 2, 3, even 4 guys. If you're even going down to Astorino, the linebacker, he can run the ball in a pinch too, and he'd be a bigger back to sort of run over some of the guys on the other team. So, with Catholic Memorial, it's all about, in my opinion, Mekhi Dodd. This guy's a tremendous running back, he's fast, he's big, he can get out on the edge and just outrun you. He can run over guys. He's quick. So I think Catholic Memorial is going to want to get him going. They have a good passing game with Kais Flannery, but it really is, to me, coming down to Dodd and him really making big plays for Catholic Memorial. Can he do it for 4 quarters?
Yeah, I think it's really, it's going to come down to KP running the ball, sustaining drives, but also finishing drives and making sure they end up scoring on these drives, specifically scoring touchdowns. Field goals aren't going to cut it against Catholic Memorial. And then on the other side of the ball, can KP limit Dodd or limit the explosive plays anyway? He's going to get his. Nobody's going to completely shut down Mekhi Dodd. It's just not going to happen. That's just not realistic to think that it's going to happen. But KP needs to limit the 50, 60, 70-yard runs by Mekhi Dodd. Those are the true backbreakers. He seems to have at least one of those every week, if not 2. It's funny. I've seen CM play a couple times this year, and it's like, let me just check Mekhi Dodd's stat line at halftime. And it's like, he's only got the ball 6 times, but he has 175 yards and 2 scores. How do you limit those big plays? And that's going to be the key in this game. I think KP is probably positioned as well as any team in the state to give CM a game. Adam, you mentioned the backs. 3 of them, it's the best trio of backs in the state, in my opinion. Talon King, Keegan Canto Osorio, and Drew LaPlante. It's a very good group there for KP. Always strong on the line. They always play good defense. It's just going to come down to limiting these explosive plays and not turning the ball over. And then if you're able to turn CM over, you're going to have to KP's going to have to capitalize and put some points on the board. We've seen teams like Wellesley, for example, turned CM over 3 times in the first half of that game. They weren't able to capitalize on those drives. KP's going to have to capitalize if they're able to come away with some takeaways. But I think, again, KP and probably Needham would be the 2 teams that I would say would be the most well-positioned to beat CM. Ultimately, I'm going to go CM here. I think it's going to kind of be a similar game to what we saw the first couple times these teams played, where KP is really able to keep it close for 3 quarters, but ultimately CM just pulls away late.
Yeah, it should be a great game. Like I said, it's the 3rd time they're meeting in 4 years. And to your point, Tyler, KP's been able to hang in there. They're going to need to play a nearly perfect game. I mean, let's be honest. To beat a team like CM, you need to take care of the football. You got to generate turnovers. You got to finish drives, and you got to limit the big play. And that's a lot to ask for most teams. But to your point, I think there's probably maybe 3 teams in the state that are positioned to where they're built at least to where they can play with CM. I think you're right. I think KP is one of them. Should be a fantastic game as always. All right. And finally, we're coming up on the Friday slate, and the first game kicks off at 3 p.m. And that pits defending Division A champion West Boylston against Randolph. Randolph, of course, a program that has had a lot of success in recent years. West Boylston looking for the 3-peat under Mike Ross. You want to talk about an underrated program? That's an underrated program. We don't talk about how good and how consistent that West Boylston program is yet. Here we are in December, and they're playing for a state title once again. This should be a fantastic matchup. You know, Tyler, you pointed this out at the beginning of the season when we did our preview show, and I think it's so true that the lower divisions this year in Massachusetts had some really good programs, but you also had a lot of parity. There were going to be a lot of really good games. This is another one of those games.
Yeah, I think Randolph is a team that Matt Treveri of Mashpee was telling me about early on, and was saying like they're going to be loaded. And Mashpee beat them in a game, but it was like a close game. It was 26-21. And Randolph is a run heavy offense. Mekhi White has had a great season for them. They're a team that gets more guys to the point of the attack than you, and they get set up running lanes. And look, West Boylston's tremendous. I mean, they won the D7 state title a couple years ago, then the D8 this past year. They're going for 3 straight state titles. And again, it's one of those. It's kind of like with Uxbridge. I felt like, West Boylston lost a lot from last year, and was thinking maybe somebody else would sort of dethrone them a little bit. But they've just been solid all the way through. They've got a couple losses, but they've been, really good. I mean, again, another team that wants to run the ball out of various different formations, and they'll try to beat you that way. And not many teams have been able to stop it. So I think this is a really good matchup. I think this could be back and forth. But look, when you're going back to Gillette for the 3rd straight year, you're going to be playing with a lot of confidence and not saying that anybody's going to beat you. So I think West Boylston should be the favorite here, but I do think Randolph's a formidable team.
Yeah, I think these two teams have been the clear favorites from early on. From Labor Day on, these kind of have been the two teams that I've been eyeing as the top teams in Division 8, and that's played out. They have 3 combined losses, but they're to very good Division 7 teams. Randolph lost to Mashpee. West Boylston lost to Clinton and Northbridge. So those are 3 teams that made it to at least the semifinal round in Division 7. West Boylston, they have the big game experience. Mike Ross, probably the most underrated coach in the state, to be honest. All the guy does is win at multiple different programs. They run that double wing offense. They're led by junior Dominic Renzoni this year. He's emerged as that top back. I think he has over 1,800 yards between rushing and receiving this year. So he's really emerged as one of the better players in the lower divisions. And then Randolph, I mean, what can you say about them? I was kind of curious to see how their season would go after they lost Nathaniel Gomes, who in my opinion was the best running back in Division 8 coming into the season. They lost him in the first quarter of that Mashpee game. And since that point, Mekhi White has ran for at least 100 yards in 7 of their last 8 games. So Mekhi White's really taken that bell cow role for Randolph. They mix in some other guys as well. Hagai Joseph, Seneca Spencer, Abe Cornett's able to keep teams honest as a quarterback. So this Randolph team is very balanced, and this Randolph team has a lot of juniors. This is a team that's going to be back again next year in the mix. I think this is going to be a true toss-up sort of game here. I've got the Lions, though. I think they win by a score, something like 28-22, 30-26, one-possession game, but I've got West Boylston pulling off the 3-peat.
What do you think has been the key to Coach Marshall turning this Randolph program around? I mean, this was a program that struggled to field teams not that long ago, and all of a sudden now, the last 5 years, they've become a factor in D8. I mean, what do you attribute that to?
I think, to me, part of it, at least it's not all of it, but part of it is giving this team an identity to run the football. And also, and although they're like a run first and second team, they've been at these, these 7-on-7s. Like the last few years that I've gone to see these 7-on-7s, Randolph's been there. And so having the kids together for, a competitive atmosphere in the summer, I think is a big thing. But I also think just having that identity of like, we're a running football team. You can't stop us, all that stuff. I think that's been a big part of it. And again, a coach like that is active. He's active in the school. He's helping these kids along the way. So I do think that identity of saying, hey, we're a running football team, that helped.
Yeah, I agree. And I think at the lower levels, that's important. You've got to develop that identity, and running the football is a way to do that. Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, I think that's spot on there, Adam. But also, it just comes. I mean, it sounds simple, but it's very difficult to find the right guy to lead a program. Sometimes John Marshall is the right guy to lead this program. I kind of think of it. It's like sort of similar in my eyes to when Milton hired Steve Dembowski, like a team that was like struggling for so long, but they found that right guy in a school that has a lot of athletes, town that has a lot of athletes. They have success in other sports, and they're able to get those athletes playing football and establishing that identity and that football culture. And John Marshall's done one hell of a job doing that at Randolph.
He has. It's been an unbelievable run the last 5 years. All right, next up we have the 5:30 game on Friday, and that is the Division 5 Super Bowl, which will pit defending champion Foxborough against Shawsheen in a matchup that these two teams played in the playoffs on the road to Gillette last year. Foxborough prevailed in that one in the semifinal round. Now they meet at Gillette Stadium. Shawsheen has been ripping through their schedule all season long, slinging Sid Tildesley, and that high-powered Rams offense has put up points pretty much against everybody. They take on a Foxborough team that might have just played the best schedule in the state, if not the best schedule in the state, certainly a top 5 schedule in the state. They're battle-tested. They're well-coached with Jack Martinelli. They're a proven commodity. They're the defending champs. They're going to come into this with a chip on their shoulder. They did lose on Thanksgiving to Mansfield. None of that will matter if they take care of business and go back-to-back. This is going to be a physical game. I think it's going to be a chippy game in some ways. It was chippy last year when these two teams played, but I think it sets up to be a fantastic matchup.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really good one. I mean, Shawsheen, Tildesley is an unbelievable player. Again, I don't think we necessarily even talk about him enough because he puts up unreal numbers. Like every game, nobody really ever shuts him down. And then with Foxborough, I think this is one of the reasons why Foxborough plays a schedule like they play. I mean, they're in the Hockomock League, so it's going to be a tough schedule regardless. But going up against, like King Philip and Walpole and teams like that, like it's okay for them to lose those games if they're going to be more battle tested to be back here. And I think Angelini is a terrific back. He's super fast. He's physical. Foxborough probably has the edge in terms of line play because they're just bigger. So I think that this again could turn into a shootout. I don't think either team is going to really shut down the other one. But again, like I feel like this is one of those games where a team could come back from down multiple scores because they're so explosive. I mean, Shawsheen with Tildesley is never out of a game really. And I feel the same way about Foxborough, even though they're more of a running team. So I think, Shawsheen sort of picked it up all season. They've really dominated their schedule. They haven't had a ton of close games. And they've beaten good teams. Like they beat Wayland by 4 scores. And Wayland's a very good team. Only has 2 losses. So
they beat him by 4 scores 7 years ago.
Oh, really?
Sorry.
But yeah, but yeah, I think I actually might go with Shawsheen here. They might, even though they have the better record, they might be kind of the underdog here. But I kind of like Shawsheen and Tildesley to get their first state title because look, they got to Gillette in 2022 and lost to North Reading. And then they lost to Foxborough in the playoffs last year, and now they're back again. I think they're a team on the mission, and I'm going to go with Tildesley and Shawsheen, the Rams here.
Yeah, I mean, Sid Tildesley just a winner, man. Like he just won his 40th career game, I think, which is just absurd for a high school player to win that many games. But he's a 4-year starter here for this team. He truly is like one of the more special players in the state. Quarterback, defensive back. I think he has a punt return touchdown this year. So he just makes plays in all 3 phases. Yep. He's an outstanding player. His brother James kind of leads that defense. He's a very good player as well. Dylan Pratt's kind of emerged here as a nice receiving weapon. Jake Banda, I think he plays linebacker on defense and running back. He's definitely running back on offense. So this Shawshing team's good. Like I don't think it needs like that sort of like precursor or anything like, oh, they're good for like a tech school. Like that, we don't need to like say that. They're just a damn good football team. They're like a legitimate top 20 team in the state, regardless of division. They haven't played. I don't think they played a single close game. Like I unless I'm forgetting something, I don't think any game's really been competitive this year. They just beat a very good old Rochester team by 3 touchdowns in the state semifinals. We talk a lot about Foxborough's schedule, rightfully so. I believe that's the most difficult one in the state. But Shawshing beefed it up this year as well. They knew what was at stake this year. They knew they had a chance to have a season like this, and they beefed up that schedule. Teams like Wayland, Bedford, Winthrop, I believe, on the schedule this year. So this is gonna be a fun game. I'm kind of on the opposite side of it, Adam. I think it's gonna be a low-scoring game. I think the defenses are going to kind of rule the day here. I think it's going to be something like 20-17, something like that, 21-14. I think I lean Foxborough. I don't feel like super comfortable with that pick at all. I think this is really a true toss-up here. Both teams have that big game experience. I think Foxborough is just a little more battle-tested. They've been in these close games. They've had to grind games out through, of course, the Hawk and the non-conference slate. I think that's going to matter. I think their ability to, or their experience in these close games is going to be the difference here. Ben Angelini, great player, of course. The heroics against Hanover with the 76-yard touchdown with under a minute left to win the game. Mike Marcasella at quarterback, Gordon at receiver. There are a lot of multi-year starters on this team that have been starting since their sophomore year. So I think Foxborough is going to pull us out and go back-to-back. But man, Shawshing is a great team, and I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if they win this one.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tremendous game, and I think it'll be one of the closer, tightly contested games of the 8. Obviously Foxborough last year had only one loss. They lost to King Philip. Other than that, they rolled through their side of the Hawk and through the playoffs. When you lose Brendan Mazinkus O'Grady, when you lose Lincoln Moore, those guys are irreplaceable. They were 2 of the best players in the state, but to your point, Tyler, they bring back a lot of guys that were key contributors to that Super Bowl team last year. You mentioned Gordon. You mentioned Marcasella. Obviously, Angelini, one of the best backs in the state. Big offensive line, big defensive line. Shawshing's going to have their hands full, but I think this is going to be a fantastic matchup. And this Shawshing team, talking to people around that program, they feel that they've been overlooked the last couple of years in D5. I think this is an opportunity for them to make a statement. I think it's going to be a terrific game, and I'm with you. I think it could go either way here. I lean Foxborough, too, because I think they're battle-tested and they've been there, but it's hard to pick against Sid Tilsley and the Rams. I mean, they've had a hell of a run here the last 3 years. All right, finally, the last game of the Super Bowl slate for 2024 pits the North Attleboro Red Rocketeers against the Mansfield Hornets. It's an all-Hockomock Division III Super Bowl. It's a rematch. These 2 teams played about a month ago. North Attleboro beat Mansfield 14-10. Should be a fantastic matchup. 2 programs that have a lot of ties. They have a lot of history together. You got coaches that have coached on both sides. You've got Mike Redding, of course, who played at North Attleboro and was a terrific receiver there in the 70s. You've got a fantastic coaching matchup here with Redding and Mike Strachan at North Attleboro. And you got 2 teams that are just tough. They have guys that are battle tested playing in the Hockomock League. You look at North with Ryan Bannon and Paradise and those guys, Chase Fasoli. You look at Mansfield, the team that, quite frankly, at the beginning of the year, I didn't think they would be here. I thought they were probably a year away if they had a Super Bowl run in them. But their senior class has really fortified the lines. Their junior class has fortified the skill positions. You got Tommy Vallette at quarterback. You got McCoy. You got Baderi. They got a nice skill group there. There's another DiGirolamo. I mean, this is a good football team, and they're playing their best football at the right time. Of course, they beat Foxborough on Thanksgiving 21-7. This should be a dandy of a game to close out the Super Bowl slate.
Yeah, I mean, MIA takes a lot of heat, but I thought they did a great job to put this game as the last one.
Nope. We're gonna disagree on that. Go ahead.
I
I'm
know.
kidding.
Yeah, I know. I got you. But I think it's an amazing face off.
And not to cut you off, the only reason I disagree with you, my friend, and I've said this to people, you could play this game at 3 a.m. there, and you're going to get 10,000 people.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter when they played this game; it's going to have the biggest crowd of the week.
It's gonna, and I think it's just gonna be a great atmosphere. I mean, when you talk about North, that was the team that at this time 3 months ago, that I thought was going to win D3. I just think, they lost a couple games. They lost to Foxborough. They lost to Canton. But overall, you hit on it. It's like it's the overall physicality of this team right now. This offense is built on downhill running. And they'll get in the power eye. They'll get in different formations. Having a quarterback like Forsoli who can run is a real benefit to them, and it's been a real benefit to them all season. I think Forsoli had over 300 yards against Reading.
Yes,
I mean
300. Yeah.
I mean he can throw too, obviously, but this guy is a runner, adds another element, and it's been really hard to defend. And look, some teams just can't really match up like that. I don't think Mansfield is going to be taken aback though, because they've already played them and it was a 14-10 game. And again, like you said, John, I did not think Mansfield was going to be here at the beginning of the season, but they are again another physical team that wants to run the football, but is very good about mixing it in. So I think this is like two brothers in the backyard throwing punches. It's going to be, these teams know each other as well as you can get. And so I think it's going to be a heck of a game. I do like North in this one, but I wouldn't be surprised if Mansfield won it.
I was at the first game, and it certainly lived up to the hype. Somebody that prefers the change of pace when you get a nice defensive slugfest, right? The 14-10 game, rather than teams going up and down the field. So I love that game. North, their physicality was just a little bit too much for Mansfield in that game. They're a very physical team. Bannon kind of sets the tone on both sides. He's been a great linebacker for multiple years now, 3-year starter on that defense, but he's really emerged as a running back here. And then you mentioned Paradise, John. He's the lightning to Bannon's thunder. They have a senior-laden offensive line. 4 of the starters are seniors. 4 of the offensive linemen starters are seniors. They're huge up front. Forsoli, his ability to make plays. They haven't asked him to do a ton this year, but I get the feeling that might change. They might, they obviously have to leave it all on the line here, final game of the year. So maybe we'll see Forsoli in that passing game a little bit more than we've seen this year. But he's a 4-year starter. He's seen everything. He's been to Gillette. He lost to Marblehead as a freshman at Gillette in the D3 state title game. So again, he's seen it all. And, you mentioned the 300-yard game, which I definitely didn't see coming. I knew he was a very athletic guy at the quarterback position, but 300 yards rushing from a quarterback from anyone is just absurd. They're very good on defense, very sound defensively. I think when they do throw the ball on offense, a guy like Bryce Kaiser, he's a playmaker. He can really get downfield and make plays for this team. I think he's kind of flown under the radar because they haven't really needed to rely on that passing game throughout the year. Mansfield could not run the ball at all against North in the first meeting. Villette made some nice plays at quarterback. Sean McCoy, they've kind of used him all over the threat. He's all over the field. He's really an offensive threat for them, kind of a Swiss Army knife. They use him at receiver, running back. They move him around the formation. So I think if Mansfield's going to win this game, I think they're going to have to be able to get some sort of running game going. It's not going to be like last game where they only handed the ball off, I think, like 7 times, something like that. So they're going to have to get the run game going against this North team if they want to win. I saw North lose to Foxborough, and that's really how Foxborough was able to win that game. They got Ben Angelini in that run game going. So I think Mansfield's just going to need to stick to the run more than they did in that first meeting if they're going to want to pull this one off. Ultimately, though, I think it's going to be another field goal type game, one-score game, and I like North to pull this one out.
Remember the old adage, fellas, it's hard to beat a team twice.
Oh yeah, that's
and
definitely
especially two programs that know each other as well as these two do. I mean, they've played each other now for years, both on the same side, when they were on opposite sides. I mean, they know each other well. And there's, like I said, there's coaching crossover there. There's coaches that were on the Mansfield sideline last year that are on the North sideline this year and vice versa. So should be a fantastic matchup to close out the Super Bowls for the 2024 season. Of course, the MIAA Super Bowls in Massachusetts. We'll have full coverage of all the games, all 3 nights, some of the best football coverage in Massachusetts. Make sure you're following along. Make sure you're following New England Football Journal at UFTBJ. Make sure you're following Adam. Make sure you're following Tyler, Kevin Stone. We've got you covered from every angle. So it's going to be a great week of football. Before we go here, I do want to give you some CIAA scores, and we're going to start with Class LL, and there were some blowouts tonight to be expected in the quarterfinal round. Fairfield Prep beat Kennedy 51-8. Fairfield Prep, of course, is the number 1 seed in Class LL. West Haven snuck past Glastonbury 6-0. So in the semifinal round, you're going to get Fairfield Prep and West Haven. That's a pretty good matchup. The other 2 matchups, and you'll have to forgive me, I'm congested. Staples beat Manchester 42-6. Yeah, they've got that. And then Greenwich beat New Britain 27-6, which sets up Staples Greenwich in the semifinal round. That's a fantastic matchup.
Haven't they already played this year?
They have, and of course, Staples is the defending Class LL champion. So that should be a fantastic matchup. In Class L, here's one of your couple of your upsets tonight. Notre Dame West Haven beat number 1 seeded Naugatuck 15-7. Darien beat Fairfield Ludlow, who I thought might have been a sleeper, even though Darien whacked him the first time, 55-13. New Canaan keeps rolling along. They beat Maloney 41-7. And Newtown beat Amity 38-7. So in the semifinal rounds, pretty interesting matchup here. You're going to get Notre Dame West Haven against Darien, and you're going to get New Canaan and Newtown. So, excuse me, that should be a pretty interesting matchup as well. Moving along here, Class MM, Windsor automatically advanced because Northwest United had to forfeit. Newington, a game that we were at tonight, beat Wethersfield 20-13. A fantastic matchup. So you're going to get Windsor and Newington in the semifinals. Should be a pretty good game. And then Bunnell beating Bristol Central. Bristol Central was the 2 seed. Bunnell beating them 21-12. This is their first playoff win in 17 years for the Bulldogs. And anybody out there who doubted Massac getting in at 7-3, well, they made a statement tonight beating Torrington 41-0. What's interesting here is you're going to get a Bunnell-Massac rematch. Bunnell beat Massac earlier this year, so you're going to get another rematch there.
And I think Massac's the only team to beat New Canaan, right?
Yeah, Massac, they shut him out.
Yeah.
All right, in Class M, Daniel Hand beat New London 45-6. St. Joe's with a statement win over Watertown 42-7. Brookfield beat Jonathan Law 48-13. And Berlin beat Rockville. Kind of a surprising score there. It was a 3-6 matchup, 33-7. So your semifinal matchups, Daniel Hand, St. Joe's. That's a heavyweight fight right there. That game will be this weekend on Sunday, 12:30 kickoff. And then you have Brookfield and Berlin. That game will be on Sunday as well. Excuse me, 12:30 kickoff. Hold on one second here. All right, and going over to Class SS, Killingly. How about this score? Killingly beat Ellington tonight 75-14. There's a lot of people in Connecticut that are saying that their system needs to be changed too. So people in Massachusetts aren't the only ones belly aching about the current system.
It never stops. It never stops for anybody.
No, not everybody can be happy. That's a
How dare we actually like what we're watching?
Right. Waterford beat Bullen Havens Tech 21-12. Wyndham beat Ledyard 17-14. Sheehan beat Granbury Canton 20-6. So in the semifinal round, you're going to get Killingly and Waterford. And you're going to get Wyndham and Sheehan, which is a pretty intriguing matchup. And finally, in Class S, WCA beat Capital Prep, which is a surprise. And they beat them 41-28. Capital Prep was the number 1 seed in Class S. Bloomfield got off to a slow start, had to replace the Kerr brothers, a lot of talent from last year. It doesn't matter. It's Bloomfield. They beat East Catholic tonight 22-21. And Sonia beat Valley Regional Lime 48-22. And Woodland with a big win over a good Cromwell Portland program 33-7. So you're going to get Bloomfield WCA and Ansonia Woodland in your semifinals. And
I wouldn't be surprised to see yet another Ansonia Bloomfield state title game. That's
you just read my mind because those two know each other very well.
Yeah, it's great. So. And like those are two of the best small school programs you'll find anywhere, any state. They're just always good. Ansonia just replaces good players with more good players. Bloomfield just always really athletic, just high scoring, and those teams just know how to win. And they're just like, you know, two of the best small school programs in New England and really the country.
Yeah, they're unbelievable. So get all semifinal matchups will be this weekend, and of course, the winners of those games will advance to the state title games the following weekend. Those games will be played at a Root Stadium on the campus of Central Connecticut State University and at the Rent in Hartford. So a Root Field and the Rent. I said stadium, but I think it's a Root Field where the Blue Devils play. And I went through puberty there with that. I said field. All right, any final thoughts here before we wrap it up?
You know, the only thing I don't like sometimes out of these championship games is how cavernous the stadium looks at Gillette sometimes, and there's just like that one section where people are sitting. I just hope people come out here. You know, the weather's not too bad yet. You know, come out here, you know, root for your kids.
Well, yeah, it snowed tonight, my friend. There was some
playoff
games down in Connecticut.
I know. So, but I just want people to come out to these games. Don't watch them at home. Be a part of the crowd and give these kids a great atmosphere to play in.
Yeah, burn some of that PTO so you can catch a 3 p.m. kickoff. Really, though, you should, Adam, you know, you said that well, I think. Get out there and enjoy the games. There are other ways to watch, but, you know, go support the kids. Go support the student athletes, these programs that have worked so hard to get there. I hope we have a nice turnout all 3 days.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I don't love the times. I think it's unfortunate that we're playing games for state titles at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday or a Thursday and a Friday. But at the end of the day, we don't control that. What we control is covering the games, and we're excited to do that. And of course, as Tyler mentioned, obviously we want people to go to the games, but there are other ways you can watch or listen to the games. They'll be broadcast live on 850 WEI. They'll be on WSBK TV, Channel 38. The games on Thursday and Friday will be on 850 WEI and Channel 38. And you can also catch the games on Patriots.com. So plenty of ways to follow along. If you can't get there, just make sure you're supporting the kids. It's a great time of year. It's championship week. Should be a lot of fun. This is what happens to your voice when you catch an annoying cold Super Bowl week, when you're coaching, when you're talking behind this thing 2 or 3 times a week. You're bound to lose your voice. It's going to happen. Probably not the worst thing in the world. I'm sure people are sick and tired of listening to my fat face bloviate. All right, well, that will do it for the final episode of the high school preview show for Massachusetts. We still have to talk Connecticut high school football, so we will be back for that stuff next week. But make sure you get out there and enjoy the games. For Tyler Emerald and Adam Kirkshire, I'm John Serenitas. We'll see you throughout the week. Peace.